started. Thank you everyone for coming in. It's pretty early. I know Blake and Charlie came in earlier. But today I'm going to first kick off the session with the P program. Does anyone know what P stands for? Perspective. Yes, nice job. So with perspectives though, does anyone know in the regular 3.0 program, which module kind of delves into the perspectives and also solution reimagination? Yes, C2. So if I just go in quickly about the general overview and the structure of P101, it's basically the fundamental structure of the program layout is similar to C2 High. You're using a paper book as the main primary source, and the workbook on the tablet follows the same structure. You prime the students, the stimulus, you go into the personal project, context concept, and then stimulus 2, and then collaborative project. That's P101 in a gist. Now today I'm going to go in depth into P104, one of the newly launching perspective programs. Before I go through that, I'm going to go through 3 things today: program objective, then general, program structure, and then go into P104, the class structure. Last but not least, I'm going to go through the book and show you the component rationale for each and every one of those. So what I recommend is, while we're going through this, you should all have the P100 segment guides in front of you. These are new. Previously, those of you who are accustomed to the 3.0 segs, 3.0 segs is that they didn't contain much information. But this one has detailed information and breaks down every component, gives you the rationale and the objective, and also goes into the project frequencies and also the project formats. Now the first thing is the program objective of the perspective program. It's definitely perspective exploration, but how? How do you explore perspective? You develop it with critical creativity and build it through exploring different perspectives, right? That's simply put a very theoretical term. If you go into the structure, now this would be the new syllabi that would be provided for all the master programs, for the P and the L. It will be in landscape mode. P102 is the one that I would look at if you're interested into Model UN or accustomed to the Model UN debate. P101, we go into the separate projects: writing, speaking, then it just rotates every 2 weeks. P104, the projects, the collaborative part, would be based off the World Scholars Debate Competition, which follows the British parliamentary format. Well, we'll see. Now each and every course, P101, P102, P104, uses one book throughout 13 weeks. Now the outlier, I guess the anomaly in the P program so far is the P101. It uses one book, 3-month track. P102 and P104, if you guys think about it, there's something missing in between, right? The 103 and they're supposed to be 105. P102, P103, both courses uses the same paper book, which is A Little History of the World. Now P104 and P105 uses the same paper book, which is called A Little History of Philosophy. So the themes of each 3 would be different. P101 would be market values, exploring that perspective. P102 and P103 would be exploring a little bit of history. Now, this is the book for P102. The P102, this book, a little history of the world, it starts from the caveman era, and it goes up to World War I. That's a lot of topics if you think about it, right? So it was divided into 2 separate programs. Now, of course, it's 3 months, 102, possibly 3 months, 103. But that does not necessarily mean you have to start off with 102. You could later on in maybe a year start with 103 and then maybe go to 102. I'm assuming a lot of your staff members will just think of it as a 6-month track. That is fine. But The rationale behind developing these programs, 102, 104, 105, 103, is that it could be separate, you could use one book. And these books, a little history series, which I'll pass around, goes into different topics. Today, I recommend before looking at the syllabus and when you're brainstorming how to prep for these programs, especially P102 and P104, I would first research the debate formats. For P102, I would know the rules, the formatting, the speaker roles, the motion types for Model UN. P104, I would go into British Parliamentary. Has anyone, or I'm just assuming, but could I see a show of hands if you've taught debate 2.0, argumentation and persuasion? Great. Has anyone taught Model UN? I know Richard has. Nice. Okay, he's not here. P104 is, if you're accustomed to British Parliamentary, we'll go into P104 today, which I will do. Now, P104, like I said, the thematic choice would be philosophy. The first lesson for P104, it goes into 4 types, or 4 philosophers. Plato, Socrates, etc., etc. It's not what or who the philosopher is, but the thematic choice of that unit would be their values, what they were preaching as a philosopher. Now, the general structure would be, it's on top of this workbook. Stimulus, concept context, and of course rhetorical device, which is basically rhetoric, rhetorical skills. And last but not least, prep for the debate. Now here's what's different from every other 3.0 program. If you've noticed, before I opened up the book, what's different?
Each lesson's 2 parts.
Yeah. 2 lessons merge into 1 unit. So if you download 1 unit, you will have lessons 1 and lessons 2. But it's in consecutive order, and you'll know when to stop because we have a big black bar on the bottom where lesson ends. Okay. When you're prepping, as I prepped for this one, I will prep for both lessons. Because lesson 1, it adds up to lesson 2, because in lesson 2, that's where you do the actual debate. So every 2 weeks, you're doing a debate. Scratch out week 13, because lesson 13 is just a review of the whole term. Now, in debate and argumentation and persuasion, what did you do in week 13? Except for pizza parties, maybe. Ed?
Final project.
Yeah.
Oh, final projects. Thanks, Kevin. Ed, yes. Final projects. And what did the kids have to do?
Present.
What else?
Essay.
Essay, sure. For maybe lit, definitely essay. But you can make them do an essay. Or up to you, right? You could do a debate. Now, the Model UN or the British Parliamentary is just a suggestion. Yes, the lessons are progressively, it adds up to become a British parliamentary format. This is 104. Now, you don't necessarily have to stick to that. You can use Asian parliamentary depending on what your management or your goals are, objectives are for your kids. However, the programs are, the courses are, the lessons and the units do lead up to the specified debate. Now, if we go into the specifics, lesson 1, lesson 2, it all follows the same order. Number 1, in lesson 1, you start off with priming the kids, introducing them to the topic today with a short activity, with an image. This one, I don't know, this activity is more of captioning and commenting, right? If you utilize this section well, the kids will love it, I think. If you don't choose to use this image, you can always have your media cards prep and do another activity. It's just about prepping them for the whole lesson, because 2 lessons are supposed to be connected. After the stimulus and introducing the topic, we're going to get into Socrates. Now, each component rationale usually is done, or it is written on the top. It's just literally what you're doing here is you're just exploring. Okay, it's reviewing and giving a context of the portion of a paper book that you have in front of you. Now, if you do already have the book in front of you, Socrates is person, I guess some of the instructors would know Socrates because a lot of us try to use Socratic methods, right? Try to lead them using leading questions. We try to get more discussion by we're trying to use this pedagogy, which is show, don't tell. Socrates was infamous and known as, does anyone know more about Socrates? What was he infamous for when he was a philosopher, when he was alive?
Taking on the sophists.
Taking on,
The sophists.
okay, yes?
Questioning everything.
Everything. Hence the theme would be the man who asked questions. He would be like one of those friends that would always question you. And after 30 minutes, even in the book it mentions, after 30 minutes of talking to Socrates, you're demotivated to live. Because whatever you try to persuade him, he would try to persuade you, okay, have you thought of this perspective? If we move on, after this part, I'd say this is the shallow part, right? You're just exploring what you've read, or what you could discuss about. When you go into more of the other philosophers that you're going to lesson 1, it's the same format. You preview, in this part, however, a video. It does have a media library link, but we're going to have a media card available, provided for everyone. Because, all right, most of you have taught 3.0. What's the problem here? You're supposed to show the video to them, but you have 2 or 3 extra steps to go through, right? You have to go into the media library, you have to search for it, which for now doesn't work that well. And even if you search for it, the video might not play. Now on the media card, we're going to provide a YouTube link, and you can show it right away. Another problem is, while I was prepping this lesson, the tag system wasn't properly tagged. So I'm going to make sure that it's tagged for everyone's use, because I think your students should go home and look at the videos again just to review. Because some of these are TED Talks. TED Talks or MOOCs provided by Harvard or maybe TED-Ed. And these videos are supposed to give them in-depth or extensive knowledge about whatever values you're going to be talking about. Now here's the difference between 2.0 and 3.0. What was the first format? You do attendance, check their research, the annotations, which they hardly do, and after that, what do you go into? Like, all right, yeah.
Or
Argumentation and presentation. They do their research. You pick 1 or 2 kids to come up and present about it, right? After that, what do you do, Mark? Have you taught debate? 2.0.
Yes.
Okay. What's that?
I'm sorry, I lost track of the question.
So we're just going through the class structure. After that, do you introduce anything about the topic in class?
Do you mean like the fallacy theories and stuff like that?
You go into skills, right?
Yeah.
Okay. After skills, you just practice the skills. What's after application of skills? What's the next step?
Prep for debate.
Yeah, you try to rush the first class and then try to give them an hour or so, even more, because they have to research this in class. Giving, yes, sure, they did do the research in advance, but I think we know that you need to help them more, to guide them in class. After the research, it's debate time, right? You choose the teams, or maybe you pre-chose them to come in. Now, something's missing here that this has. It's topical knowledge. You're going through values that's listed onto the book, and you're helping them, guide them, giving them more in-depth, I guess, interpretation of what these philosophers talked about. Because if you think about the debate motions in British parliamentary, there's a few types. One would be value. Does anyone know the others? This house believes that. That would be called policy format. Okay? And there's also a factual debate format. These 3 do show up. The most common in 104 is policy and value, naturally because philosophy. Now, after this concept and context, where you're just going over all the you're trying to conceptualize and contextualize for the kids today's unit or the lesson, you go into the rhetorical device, which is similar to the argumentation and persuasion workbook. If you look at it, you go through the first lesson, deductive and implicative, sorry. Now this, first lesson 1, you're introducing it. The step is identifying. And after identifying, you apply it. And after you apply it, you practice, right? This basic steps. The difference in lesson 2, which is in the same booklet, is it's not identify. You're doing the same rhetorical technique, but it's review. So it's, I guess, a comprehensive review there. That's the difference, again, compared to 2.0 and 3.0. In 2.0, you're very rushed to introduce a skill theory. In 3.0, you have 2 lessons to go over the skills. Make sure that they're absorbing it, because I think, personally, that was the hardest part. I had to rush through 5 logical fallacies, and I had to talk to them about a syntone, and they just don't get it. Because for them, they just wanted to research first, because they don't understand the topic yet. After the skill